You know, I think people often imagine slow living as this peaceful escape, quiet mornings, homemade bread, a cozy home, soft music playing whilst tea steams beside a book. And don't get me wrong, those things can absolutely bring comfort and calm into your life. They've brought a lot into mine, a lot. I was drawn to the slow living world because burnout had pushed me to the edge, and I desperately wanted peace, and I was done living the hustle culture life. But I think sometimes slow living gets presented online like it's the answer. Like if we just slow down enough, buy the candles, move to the countryside, drink herbal tea all day, and create the perfect morning routine, suddenly we'll feel peaceful and healed. And honestly, that wasn't my experience, because you can still live slowly and be deeply unhappy. You can still light the candle and feel anxious, feel no peace. You can still create a beautiful routine while your mind is exhausted and overwhelmed underneath it all. And I think that's what I started to realize, that slow living wasn't the only thing that saved me. It's just one piece of a much bigger change. It's an important part, but it's not the be all end all. For me, after years of stress and burnout, which led to extreme, severe burnout, chronic stress, depression, anxiety, I was in survival mode. I was running from things. I wasn't facing things that needed to be dealt with, that I needed to heal from. I was living this in this fast-paced world, hustle culture, professionally, personally, and I was just getting hit by one thing after another, and it was getting to the point where I couldn't cope, and I just wanted peace so badly. So I started slowing down, just looking for anything that could be the answer to quickly get out of this, especially after, leaving corporate. I started creating quieter mornings. I lit the candles. I tried to make my home feel softer and calmer. And those things did help me in some ways, in many ways. But I remember realizing at one point that I could still be sitting there in a perfectly peaceful moment, and my mind was still racing and felt exhausted. I was still overthinking. I was still anxious. I was still a bit depressed, and I was still carrying old stress and unhealthy patterns into this slower life that I was trying to create for myself. Because the truth was, I hadn't actually changed the things that were making me miserable yet. I had changed the atmosphere around me, but I wasn't really dealing with the things underneath it. And while slow living can work in some ways, if you're not dealing with the things at the core, it's not a problem solver, not for long anyway. And eventually I realized that peace didn't just come from adding soft things into my life. That would be nice, but it didn't. It came from making hard changes, really hard changes. I had to start looking honestly at what was actually making me unhappy and stressed all the time. And some of those things were incredibly difficult to face. I had to leave a job that was absolutely destroying my health. That meant I had to downsize, my house, my entire life. That was a lot of change. I had to become more intentional with my money, budgeting a bit more frugal, maybe a lot more frugal. be more intentional with my time, with the people around me, definitely with the people around me. And I had to stop abandoning myself just to keep the peace with everyone else. And honestly, none of that felt even remotely peaceful at first. Some of it felt really terrifying because even though slow living online often looks beautiful and calming, real change is usually uncomfortable, often really uncomfortable, before it becomes freeing. My problems, unfortunately, didn't suddenly disappear. I still, as I said, had anxiety. I had stress still. I wasn't dealing with everything, great all the time, a lot of the time at first. I still had, really hard days and setbacks and moments where I genuinely wondered if any of it was actually working. There were days that it felt like 3 steps forward and then 100 steps back. It just felt, really, I don't even know what the word is, just at times quite demoralizing, frustrating, when it just didn't feel like things were going anywhere. But slowly, things started changing underneath the surface. Not because my life became perfect, far from it, but because I was starting to live differently, not just on the outside, but on the inside as well. And I think that's when I started to understand what peace actually looks like in everyday life. It's not perfection, it's not never struggling, it's not waking up happy every single day. It's much smaller than that. It's reacting less, it's not letting one frustrating moment ruin my entire day like it used to or could do a lot of the time. It's recognizing when something is outside of my control, doing what I can about it, and then letting myself stop carrying it around mentally for hours or even days afterwards. It's catching myself overthinking and spiraling or getting ready to, and gently pulling myself back into the present again. And honestly, some of the biggest changes have happened in really ordinary moments. Making breakfast slowly instead of rushing, watering my plants and not worrying whether I'm going to have time to get them all done, sitting quietly with a cup of tea without needing to distract myself constantly, just being present with me and that cup of tea, just actually being where I am for that moment. I still have stress. I still have difficult days, sometimes really difficult days. I still worry sometimes, sometimes a lot more than I would like, but I'm getting much better at that. My mind feels quieter now, and I think that's because for the first time in a long time, I'm no longer fighting myself all day, every day. And it's not always been easy. It's a journey to get there. It takes persistence and not stopping, even when it feels like nothing's getting better. So this isn't to say that slow living hasn't helped me, because living slowly, living more intentionally, absolutely has genuinely helped me. Slowing down has changed a lot for me. Creating quieter routines, consuming less, making my home feel peaceful, and more reflective of me, spending more time offline and in nature, those things have played a huge part in my healing, especially when it comes to facing things from the past, healing trauma, things like that that can be really difficult. That's where slow living can help with that, particularly help with that. It gives a balance. I honestly don't think I could have started healing myself clearly without slowing down first. Slowing down gave me space to reflect, to notice my patterns, to make difficult decisions, to actually sit with myself instead of constantly distracting or overwhelming myself. But I think now slow living means something very different to me than it used to. It's no longer about creating a perfect life. It's about supporting the life I'm trying to build internally as well. And I think that's why it finally started feeling real. And I think that's the biggest thing I've realized through all of this. I used to believe peace only existed somewhere else, in a different life, a different house, a different environment, some perfect escape from all the stress and noise. And that belief only made me more miserable because it felt so out of reach for me. But so much of this journey has actually been learning that peace can begin exactly where you are as well, in small choices, in slower moments, in mindset shifts, in boundaries, in how you care for yourself and respond to life day to day. I'm creating this slower, more peaceful and intentional life, even though my life still isn't perfect, even with stress, even with uncertainty, and even through the difficult days. I'm doing it in the same place I've lived for years, just in a smaller house. I realized I didn't need to escape my entire life to begin creating peace within it. So much of it has come down to just changing my outlook, my mindset, and the way I move through life. It's been really life-changing to realize that I don't have to wait for everything to finally fall into place before I allow myself peace. I can begin now in the messy middle, not someday, not when everything is better, but now. From the outside, my life looks much simpler these days. Slower mornings, a quieter home, more intentional routines, less rushing, less noise. And that's great, it's lovely, but what people don't usually see is how much had to change underneath that, how much work has gone in, how much time has been put in, the difficult decisions, the discomfort, the fear, the work being put in to mindset shifts, the learning and unlearning. None of this happened overnight. And honestly, I'm still learning. I still have goals as well. I still have dreams for my future. I still want to build a beautiful life for myself, but I'm no longer trying to destroy myself to prove my worth whilst I do it. And I think that's the difference. Slow living for me was never about giving up my ambition or escaping life completely. It was about learning how to create peace within my life as it already is, while still building towards the future I want. Because peace didn't just come from slowing down, it came from changing how I was living. Not impressive and not performative, just honest. And for the first time in a very long time, that actually feels like enough. Thank you for being here and listening to me today. If this video resonated with you at all, you can always subscribe and join me on this journey. And until next time, take care of yourself.